Green Lantern might not have been in Justice League, but despite the relative lack of screen time, DC's premier Emerald hero is still one of their most popular. Boasting a deep and gloried history that has wormed its way into pretty much every facet of pop culture out there, the Green Lantern Corps are as iconic as they are compelling, replete with a brilliant oath that I definitely don't know the words to. Ugh, why would you think that? That being said, there are elements of the character's past that have been brushed under the carpet in recent years. Both on the screen and off, Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, John Stewart and Kyle Rayner have all dealt with their fair share of controversies, as well as moments that, through lack of recent exposure, illustrate a tacit desire on DC's behalf for fans to forget they even happened in the first place. With that in mind, I'm Ewan from What Culture, and here are 10 things DC Comics wants you to forget about Green Lantern. Number 10. The 2011 film. When Ryan Reynolds signed on to star in a Green Lantern film 7 years ago, fans were understandably excited. The actor regularly topped fan cast lists for the part of Hal Jordan, and while Warner Bros. Had experienced little success outside of the Dark Knight trilogy around that time, hope that the studio could mount a feasible challenge to the MCU didn't feel all that unrealistic. Look, we had high hopes back then, don't judge. Of course, by the time the film did release, it didn't paint a pretty picture, or green construct. Reynolds was given nothing to work with in the script. The CGI, oh god, not the green suit again, lacked any of the punch that had typified the burgeoning efforts of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The acting was stiff, the villain cartoonish and not in a good way, and Reynolds, bless him, swiftly departed DC and set about optioning a Deadpool film to Fox. The rest was history, but it's important to remember that Green Lantern killed plans for a DC Cinematic Universe years before Man of Steel was set in motion. Number 9. The Green Lantern. This isn't a moment to forget so much as it is one we don't see nearly enough of anymore, but given the fact DC is owned by Warner Bros., it's downright surprising we haven't. 2003's Duck Dodgers cartoon is one of Warner Bros. Animation's most overlooked and underappreciated gems. Developed by Batman animated series Alan Paul Dini, along with Spike Brandt, Tony Cavone, and Tom Minton, the show riffed on one of Merry Melody's most popular episodes and placed Daffy Duck in the 24.5 century. Tom Jones even sang the theme song, and went on to cameo in an episode later down the line. It was crazy, and by far the most intelligent use of the Looney Tunes license in recent years. One episode, called The Green Lantern, featured Daffy swapping suits with Hal Jordan and joining the Green Lantern Corps. Kevin Smith even got in on the act as Hal, making this only slightly weirder than that time Elmer Fudd became a Batman villain the other year. Seriously, go read that comic, it's great. Number 8. He once punched Batman in the face. One thing that isn't common knowledge is that Batman and Green Lantern don't tend to get along. In fact, he doesn't get along with any of them, which makes sense considering he's the literal embodiment of fear. While you would think most writers wouldn't dare have another hero punch the Dark Knight in the face, Jeff Johns did just that in Green Lantern Rebirth. Chronicling the rebirth of Hal Jordan after his death, Bats is reluctant to embrace the OG Lantern on account of the circumstances that surrounded his original demise, which we'll get to soon. The rational reaction? Hal socks Bruce square in the jaw, knocking him to the ground and cementing a superhero power play quite literally no one was asking for. Number 7. Batman punched him in the face. Funnily enough, later on, and in the same comic, Batman punches Hal in the face, knocking him to the floor so that they can move on with the knowledge that they've both managed to get the upper hand on the other. Toxic AF. This wasn't the only occasion where Bruce smacked a Lantern though. Earlier, back when Guy Gardner was Earth's main Lantern, he had a bit of a feud with the Dark Knight. Undermined at every opportunity by Bats, who was the then leader of Justice League International, Guy ended up challenging Bats to a fight without his ring. Not sensing that this was, a terrible idea, Guy entered the ring and was flattened with one punch. A fat blue beetle crows over the unconscious Gardner rather happily. Poor Guy, he's no one's favourite, but look at him, that's a cute little haircut. Keep going, Gardner. Number 6. The women in refrigerators debacle. You don't have to look far to see that women haven't been treated particularly well in the comic book medium. The subject of killings, torture, depowerings, and more, most male-led books have flirted with victimizing female characters for the sake of shock value on numerous occasions, none more infamous than the Great Refrigerator Debacle of '94. The Green Lantern at the time, Kyle Rayner, was dating a lass called Alexandra DeWitt. The relationship didn't last long though, as, almost out of the blue, DeWitt is murdered and stuffed into a fridge by a bloke called Major Force, the antagonist during Ron Mars's tenure on the book. The panel was immediately controversial, but took on a whole new life altogether when Gail Simone founded Women in Refrigerators in 1999. The site helped shift the conversation in the industry by collating instances where women in comics were victimized, utilizing DeWitt's death as a focal point for the movement itself. The phrase "women in refrigerators syndrome" was coined, and the scene has been enshrined in comics criticism ever since. Good going, Ron. Number 5. The original Green Lantern's weakness was wood. Hal Jordan might be the first human Green Lantern to belong to the main Corps, but Earth did have another hero who went by that name during World War II. Alan Scott, the original Lantern, was a magic user and a pivotal member of the Justice Society of America back in his prime. And while he's a great character through and through, it must be said that his original weakness wasn't all that great. In fact, it was pretty terrible, with Scott having to steer well clear of wood to ensure he could win a given battle. Was this some mystic enchanted wood? Perhaps the bat Homer used in Homer at the Bat? Nah mate, it's literally just wood. F***ing wood. Granted, pretty much everyone is susceptible to a baseball bat if it dings them on the head, but come on Alan, surely you can do better than that? Number 4. The color yellow also hurts them too. Oh god, give me a second. While this particular weakness has been retconned to make more sense than it originally did, kind of, there's no getting away from the fact that having the color yellow be your weakness is really quite embarrassing. The so-called color of fear, yellow belongs to the villainous Sinestro Corps, and renders any and all green energy, the color of will, susceptible to attack. It's not just Sinestro and his fellow compatriots who are able to run riot with the color, however, but every single thug out there. Well, it's most definitely not worth a read, unless arsehole Batman is your kind of guy. In All-Star Batman and Robin, the Lantern suffers further embarrassment when the Dark Knight paints himself yellow, utilizing the opportunity to yell at Hal like he does at everyone in the comic. It's no kryptonite, that's for sure. While DC have done well to explain the effects of the color on the Lanterns, those early GL comics really do make for hilarious reading, especially when Hal gets decked by a stray yellow lamp. Number 3. Hal Jordan once killed the entire Green Lantern Corps. Hal Jordan might be something of a fan favorite character, but there's no getting away from the fact he once embarked on a genocidal campaign to reshape the universe in his own image. When his hometown of Coast City was destroyed by Mongol, Hal decided to violate a key tenet of the Corps and recreate the city from the ground up, including everyone who had perished in the blast. Not content there, he then travelled to Oa, killing a whole host of Lanterns on the way, before murdering Sinestro and the Guardians themselves. Taking on the mantle of Parallax, Jordan conjured some new threats and began terrorizing the galaxy in a pretty terrifying way. Come 0 Hour Crisis in Time, Jordan had well and truly cemented his villainous status by attempting to remake the DC universe in his own image, a plan that was only foiled thanks to the efforts of your boy Green Arrow, who shot his former friend through the heart in the story's climax. It was later revealed that Hal had been possessed by Parallax, but as far as villainous turns go, this one's pretty irredeemable. Or so you would think. Number 2. Hal Jordan then became the Spectre. Created by Jerry Siegel and Bernard Bailey in 1940, Spectre is the literal spirit of vengeance, and one of the more violent heroes in DC's library. Plenty of characters have been chosen to represent the spirit, including Jim Corrigan and Crispus Allen, but it was Hal Jordan's tenure as the character that everyone seems to have forgotten about. Judged to spend the afterlife in purgatory, Jordan was selected to become the Spectre as a means of redeeming his soul. Among his most famous acts as the spirit was his resurrection of Oliver Queen, who'd perished at the hands of a terrorist cell earlier in the decade, only emerging from the role in 2004 when he returned to the Lantern mantle and started smacking Batman in the face repeatedly. Number 1. They were forced to abandon a Wonder Woman romance. Green Lantern has had plenty of love interests over the years, but one name who definitely wouldn't come to mind would be Wonder Woman. While the two never actually ended up dating, DC were interested in the idea of making the pair an item due to writer Jack C. Harris writing both characters during the late 70s. Batman was actually also available, but Jordan was judged to be the more suitable partner, so plans were drawn up to make it happen by the end of the decade. The problem, however, was that the idea of a Wonder Woman GL romance had already been drawn up by a fan, who'd communicated the idea to DC directly in a letters page while plans for the romance were being finalized. Fearing that the fan could lay claim to the idea, DC abandoned it altogether, shifting Harris to another book and pairing Diana up with different partners over the years, including Batman himself at one point. Jordan has since been paired up with a bunch of different characters, and while the Green Lantern Wonder Woman romance might seem odd on the surface, it came very close to happening back in the day. And that's our list. Know of any other moments the Lanterns would rather you forget? Be sure to let us know in the comments below, and while you do, why don't you also like, share and subscribe, and head back over to whatculture.com for more comic book coverage every day. I've been Ewan, and I'll see you next time, in brightest day or blackest night.
Go on then.
Yeah, well done for making it to the end of that video, guys. We're both very proud of you. You can subscribe as always beneath me. To my left, there are a few other videos that you might fancy watching. To our right, there are a few other channels, like around this way, that you can also click on if you fancied that. And